Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Saturday, April 22nd, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below, and if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Saturday in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the New York Yankees. We're going to see Alek Manoah and Gerrit Cole on the mound in this one. Obviously, Gerrit Cole's off to an amazing start to 2023. 4-0 with a .95 ERA. He's got 32 strikeouts and 28 and a third innings of work. Very early in the season, but certainly the early Cy Young favorite in the American League. On the other side, Alek Manoah, who is the ace of this Blue Jays rotation, he has struggled in 2023. In his last two starts, both at the Rogers Center, he struggled mightily. He gave up 10 earned runs across 9 innings of work. With he had 8 strikeouts, but he also allowed 9 walks and 2 home runs. Now, to me, I was watching actually both of those starts for Manoah, and it looked like he was slipping on that mound. It's a new Rogers Center, a lot of renovations this year for the stadium. I wonder if it's going to take some time for Manoah to get used to that new mound. Back on the road here, his last road start was against Kansas City on April 5th. He pitched really well in that game. He went 7 innings. He had 5 strikeouts. And, he pitched well against the Yankees last season. Not a very easy lineup to face, but he had a sub-3 ERA in the innings he faced them in. So, to me, we're going to see a low-scoring game. We see a low total for good reason. Gerrit Cole hasn't been giving up many runs to begin with, so I'm going to take the under in the Blue Jays-Yankees. Next up, it's the Washington Nationals taking on the Minnesota Twins. Chad Cole and Pablo Lopez are your starters. The Twins are big favorites, so there's not really a lot of value on the money line or even the run line in a game like this, but I don't care. I got to lay the 1.5 runs and maybe even 2.5 runs with the Twins in a game like this. This is a pitching mismatch, in my opinion. And, it looks like this trade between the Marlins and Twins, where, Luis Arraez at the beginning of the season was hitting above 500, hit for the cycle. Just an unbelievable start to the year for him. Not a lot of people talk about Pablo Lopez, but he's got a sub-2 ERA, 33 strikeouts, and 26 innings of work, .81 whip. Looks like a fair trade to me. The Marlins' offense last year was miserable. They really needed a bat they can trust, and the Twins' rotation was dicey last year, and they got a nice starting pitcher they can trust. So, I do think Pablo Lopez pitches well. The Nationals have struggled against right-handed pitching to start the year. Chad Cole's got an ERA above 8. He struggled both on the road and at home this season, giving up at least 4 earned runs in each of his first 3 starts, giving up at least 1 home run in each of his first 3 starts. Give me the Minnesota Twins laying the 1.5 runs. I'll lay a little bit on the 2.5 as well. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Chicago Cubs. Hayden Wesneski and Dustin May are your starters. Hayden Wesneski struggled in his lone start at Wrigley Field this season, giving up 7 total runs. 5 of those were earned, 6 base hits, 4 walks, and a homer, and only an inning and a third against the Mariners. But that actually ended up being a 14-9 win for the Cubs, as their offense backed Wesneski up in the end. And actually, they've done so all season long so far. His first 3 starts, Wesneski, the Cubs have scored at least 10 runs in each of those games. So, I do think that Wesneski last year pitched well at Wrigley Field. We saw him bounce back in a nice way after that rough start against the Mariners. Pitching at Oakland, he went 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, only 1 earned run, no walks, and no home runs. And Dustin May on the other side, he's had pretty good numbers to start the year, but definitely coming off his worst start of the season, only going 5 2/3, giving up 8 base hits, 5 earned runs, and a homer with only 1 strikeout. And overall, his strikeout numbers are way down this year, only 13 Ks in 24 innings. To me, I would consider Dustin May more of a strikeout-dependent pitcher than most guys in the league. He's got really good stuff, and in the prior years, he had really good strikeout stuff, but some injuries sometimes, like guys like Noah Syndergaard, can really hurt those strikeout numbers. So I do worry about that. I think the value here lies with the Chicago Cubs. This has been a team that's been competitive this year. We know the Dodgers have been overvalued in spots this season. So give me the Chicago Cubs getting that plus money on the money line. Next up is the Chicago White Sox taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Shane McClanahan and Dylan Cease are your starters in this one. When you see 2 starting pitchers like McClanahan and Cease battle it out, you're going to see a pretty low total in a game like this, but I do think this total set just a little bit too low, and I also think that both of these lineups can benefit from this matchup. Dylan Cease last time out was not his best, and he's given up a lot of sharp contact this season. He's also had some issues with the free passes. We saw that in the game against the Orioles where the White Sox bats gave him a 4-run lead in the first inning of that when they got to Grayson Rodriguez, But then Cease really struggled towards the end of that outing. He ended up giving 4 total runs up, and 2 of those were earned, so the defense didn't help him out. But he had 5 walks allowed in that game, and that was an 8-4 White Sox loss. We know the White Sox bullpen's been one of the worst bullpens in baseball, so I could certainly see the Rays getting to Cease and the bullpen. The Rays lineup against righties has been great this season, so I like the Rays matchup. But I also think when you look at the Chicago White Sox over the years, and even this year, they have pretty good numbers against left-handed pitchers. They do a really good job at limiting strikeouts at the plate against those lefties. And Shane McClanahan, his last start against the Blue Jays, although he was able to get through 6 innings of a one-run ball, he wasn't very sharp at the beginning of that outing. He had some issues with his control, and the Rays offense backed him up and gave him a lot of run support. But I think this is a game where the White Sox could get to him early on. And I think we're going to see this game go over the total. So give me the over in White Sox Rays. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Kyle Freeland and Christopher Sanchez are your starters in this one. I'm going to take the under in this game. Kyle Freeland's pitched well away from home this season. He's only had 1 road start, 6 innings, no earned runs. But even last year, you look at his numbers away from home compared to at Coors Field. At Coors Field, his 6.00 ERA and 87 innings of work with a 3.03 opponent's batting average. On the road in 87 2/3 innings, a 3.08 ERA, better strikeout numbers, lower opponent's batting average, less home runs allowed. So I do think Freeland can put together a good outing here. Christopher Sanchez pitched really well in the minor leagues. This is going to be his season debut at the major league level, but he had really good strikeout stuff. His ERA was low. I think he could pitch well here against the Rockies team on the road. So give me the under in Rockies Phillies. Next up, it's the New York Mets taking on the San Francisco Giants. David Peterson and Logan Webb are your starters. You guys know I don't really back David Peterson too often, but I do think this is one of those spots that benefit him, and we're getting a really good price because Logan Webb's on the other side, and the Giants are the home team. But last year, David Peterson faced these Giants at Oracle Park. He went 6 innings. He only gave up 2 earned runs, and I think it was just 1 mistake pitch against Brandon Crawford. I believe it was a 2-run home run in that game. He had 6 strikeouts in that one, and overall put together a fine outing, and the Mets won that game pretty handily. And, on the other side, Logan Webb hasn't been as sharp this year as he was last year, that's for sure. I mean, he's 0-4 with a 4.94 ERA, giving up a lot of sharp contact and a lot of home runs, which is not what you want to see from a guy who's really known to be a ground ball specialist. And, his strikeout numbers have definitely been better this year, but I just don't really think Logan Webb is that type of pitcher that can rely on those missed bats. So the New York Mets do a great job at limiting strikeouts. I think they can get to Logan Webb here. I think David Peterson's good enough. And like I said, I think it's a good matchup. Not only did Peterson pitch well against them last year, but the Giants this year are struggling against lefties. They're ranked 29th in baseball on team OPS. Their strikeout rate is 4th highest in baseball. Their walk rate's one of the lowest. So give me the New York Mets here at a really good price on the money line. Next up is the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to see Luis Cessa and Rich Hill on the mound in this one. Not really two of my favorite starting pitching options in this one, but Rich Hill, I got to give him credit. Last time out, he was struggling going into his last start. He goes to Coors Field against the Rockies, which is not really a place that pitchers like to go for a breakout spot, but he pitched really well in that game. 6 innings, 1 earned run, and 7 strikeouts in a 14-3 Pirates win. And really, his game before that against the Astros was also not too shabby. 6 innings, 2 earned runs. So that's against a really tough Astros lineup. Now you're facing a Reds team that's both ranked outside the top 15 in both team OPS and isolated power against left-handed pitching. They're top 10 in the league in strikeout rate against lefties. And they've got Luis Cessa on the bump, who just cannot be trusted in a game like this. His last start against the Phillies, he went 3 innings, giving up 14 base hits, 11 earned runs, a home run, and 3 walks. 11 earned runs, maybe the most earned runs allowed by any pitcher this season. So, Cessa only has 3 strikeouts in 12 innings this season, an 8-3 walk to strikeout ratio, as many strikeouts as home runs allowed. Not what you want to see. I think the Pittsburgh Pirates get to him, and I think Rich Hill's good enough here. So give me the Pittsburgh Pirates on the money line. Next up, it's the Detroit Tigers taking on the Baltimore Orioles. This game's going to be on Fox Sports 1 at 7:05 Eastern. We see Joey Wentz and Kyle Gibson as the projected starters. I definitely see the regression concerns in Kyle Gibson's game, and it's why he's not really a starter I'm looking to back too often going forward, but I still think he's the better option in a game like this with Joey Wentz on the other side, who has also struggled this year with a 6.39 ERA, only 10 strikeouts and 12 2/3 innings with 6 walks allowed, and facing an Orioles team that's crushed lefties to start the season. I think that's where the big thing for me is, although Gibson really can't be trusted too much going forward, he's facing a Tigers team that offensively has not been very trustworthy or consistent this year, and the Orioles are 4th in the league in team OPS against lefties. Isolated power ranked 4th in baseball. Their walk rate's at 14.1%, which is second best in the league. Their strikeout rate ain't too bad either. I'm going to take the Baltimore Orioles against Joey Wentz and Tigers bullpen on the money line. Next up, it's the Oakland Athletics taking on the Texas Rangers. Shintaro Fujinami and Andrew Heaney are your starters in this one. It is a tough game for me because I do think both of these starting pitchers are really volatile guys. Guys that, at some points can miss a lot of bats and put together strong outings, but at other times their control can be off and the home runs and walks will be aplenty. And we've seen that in Andrew Heaney's career. We've seen that in the early parts of Shintaro Fujinami's MLB career. I do trust the Rangers bullpen and their lineup a lot more in a game like this. So that's why I'm leaning still towards the Rangers on the run line. The Rangers are top 10 in baseball in both team OPS and isolated power against right-handed pitching, and their walk rate's top 15 in baseball. So for a guy like Fujinami who's had control issues, that could be a problem. Their strikeout rate's not too shabby. The Rangers' strikeout rate not too bad against righties. The left-handed hitting numbers for the Oakland Athletics is not too bad compared to their right-handed hitting numbers, but still just not good enough. It's outside the top 15 in team OPS. Isolated power is ranked 26. Their strikeout rate's not too bad, but I still think Heaney's the slightly more trustworthy pitcher. The Rangers have the much better lineup, so I'm going to take the Texas Rangers here, lay the 1.5 runs, but probably not a game I'm rushing to bet. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. We're going to see Garrett Whitlock and Wade Miley on the mound in this one. I do think this is a spot where the Brewers could be a little bit overvalued. When you look at their team record, obviously much better than the Red Sox to start the year. You look at Wade Miley in the ERA at 1.5. You see him coming off that really good start against the Padres. I do think because of all that, the Brewers are a little bit overvalued. I just haven't seen Wade Miley string together starts where he's missing a ton of bats. He had 8 strikeouts in his last outing of 7 innings against the Padres, but still on the year below a strikeout per inning, 18 innings of work, 14 Ks. I do think the Red Sox could get to him, and Garrett Whitlock's put together his last start against the Angels, a tough Angels lineup. He went 7 innings, 1 earned run, and it was good enough for the Red Sox to win that game 2-1 in the end. So I do think there's some value here with the Red Sox. It's an interesting game. The money line price, basically a coin flip, and I do think with the Red Sox as a small underdog, I'm going to take a shot with them on the money line here. So give me Boston money line. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Atlanta Braves. Framber Valdez and Kyle Wright are your starters in this one. I do think Kyle Wright can get back to his 2022 form, but it's going to take a few starts, and, I haven't really loved what I've seen from him in his first 2 outings this season against, arguably two of the weaker lineups in baseball against the Reds and Royals. He gave up 6 earned runs in his first 8 2/3 innings, and he had 7 walks allowed in those innings as well. Now you're facing an Astros team that's definitely not been as strong against righties as they've been against lefties, but they're still a competitive lineup, and, the Braves against left-handed pitching last year were a pretty powerful lineup, but this season only ranked 14th in the league so far in isolated power against lefties. And we know Framber Valdez already does a really good job at keeping the ball on the ground, getting those ground ball double plays. And the Braves are second highest in the league in BABIP against lefties currently, 385 BABIP. We know that's going to regress, and we're going to see the Braves' offensive numbers probably, regress as well with that number decreasing. So I'm going to take the Houston Astros in the first 5 innings of this one. I do think the Braves have the better bullpen. We know this is a very tough lineup to face in the later innings, a rally team. So I'm just going to take the Astros in the first 5 where we know who the starting pitching matchup. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're going to see Merrill Kelly on the bump for Arizona, and Joe Musgrove, makes his MLB or season debut in the major league level for the Padres. Now, Joe Musgrove pitched in a couple of rehab starts in the minor leagues and really didn't have his best stuff in those games. Gave up a good amount of earned runs in his single-A start and also his triple-A start. And although his strikeout numbers were fine, it's given up a lot of base hits and earned runs. Not what you want to see. Now having to go to the major league level and face a Diamondbacks team that has been really competitive offensively, a team that doesn't strike out much. We saw in the first game of this series, Arizona, although they lost that game, scored 5 runs, they had 12 base hits in that one and a walk to go with it, and only 8 strikeouts in those 9 innings. So I do think that Arizona is not going to be an easy matchup for Joe Musgrove, and with Merrill Kelly pitching on the other side, Diamondbacks, 2.53 ERA this season. Last year, better numbers at home than he was on the road. I think Merrill Kelly can put together a good enough start here for the Diamondbacks to grab the win. So we're getting a really good price with Arizona because Joe Musgrove is, a big name in baseball, really good starting pitcher, and eventually Joe Musgrove is going to get back to the to the level we saw him in last year. But right now, I'm going to see a couple of starts for Joe at the beginning of his season at the major league level before I start backing him. Give me the Arizona Diamondbacks on the money line. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Zach Greinke and Tyler Anderson are your starters. I really can't trust either of these options here on the mound. I was leaning towards the Angels, but Tyler Anderson's really struggled this year, and he's more of a ground ball pitcher, and he's given up a lot of home runs, which is not what you want to see. 5 home runs in your last 2 outings against the Red Sox and Blue Jays. Obviously, both of those teams much better lineups than the Kansas City Royals this year. But isolated power number-wise, the Royals are actually top 15 in baseball against left-handed pitching, and they make a lot of sharp contact. So this could be a good spot here for the Royals offense to break out a little bit. On the other side, Zach Greinke, I cannot trust him in a game on the road. We saw last year. We've seen this year. He struggles on the road. He pitches well at Kauffman Stadium. His lone road start this year at the Texas Rangers. He only went 5 innings. He gave up 2 home runs, 4 total runs. 3 of those were earned. Only 3 strikeouts in the end. And that was an 11-2 Royals loss. I'm going to take the over in Kansas City, Los Angeles. And in the final game for Saturday's card in Major League Baseball, it is the St. Louis Cardinals and the Seattle Mariners. Miles Mikolas and Luis Castillo are your projected starters. What more can be said about Luis Castillo? Similar to Garrett Cole, off to an amazing start to 2023. 2-0 with a .73 ERA with a .61 WHIP, 26 strikeouts in 24 2/3 innings. So he hasn't given up a home run yet this year. Not really giving up many free passes. Not a ton of base hits to go with it. And he's faced some of the weaker lineups in the league, but still, I think he can put together a good outing here. On the other side, St. Louis Cardinals, Miles Mikolas, we know he pitches better at pitcher-friendly ballparks like Busch Stadium, and we saw that in his last start against the Pirates, where he pitched at home 5 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs in the end. And, I do think Miles Mikolas can put together a good outing here at T-Mobile Park, a park where we don't see a ton of home runs allowed, and more pitcher-friendly, or pitch-to-contact guys, I should say, pitch well there. So I do think Mikolas can put together a decent outing. I think there's going to be a lower-scoring game in this series. So give me the under in St. Louis, Seattle to end the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Saturday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.